Human life in Spain began hundreds of thousands of years ago. The earliest people were hunters and gatherers who lived close to nature. Over time, these early humans slowly learned new skills. They began to grow crops, raise animals, and settle in one place. This change led to the rise of Neolithic farming villages and later the Bronze Age cultures of the Iberian Peninsula. As history moved forward, Spain became more populated and diverse. By the beginning of the Iron Age, around the first millennium BC, the peninsula was no longer empty land. Instead, it was filled with many different tribes and communities, each with its own customs, language, and way of life. Along the Mediterranean coast lived the Iberians. In the inner lands and the northwest lived various Celtic peoples. In the west were the Lusitanians, and in the southwest lived the advanced Tartessians, known for their trade and wealth. At the same time, Spain began to attract powerful visitors from far away. Skilled sailors from the eastern Mediterranean arrived by sea. Among them were the Phoenicians, famous traders who built ports and settlements along the coast. As early as the 9th century BC, they founded cities such as Gadir, which is modern-day Cadiz. These settlements helped connect Iberia to wider trade networks. Later, Greek colonists arrived during the 7th and 6th centuries BC. They also built their own towns, especially along the northeastern coast. One important Greek settlement was located in what is now Catalonia. Through trade and contact, Greek ideas, goods, and culture spread into the region. By the 5th and 4th centuries BC, a new power rose in Iberia. Carthage, a strong state in North Africa and a former Phoenician colony, took control of many coastal areas. The Carthaginians ruled old Phoenician cities and built new strongholds, including Carthago Nova, known today as Cartagena. Iberia became a land shared by native tribes and foreign powers. This balance changed in the 3rd century BC, when Iberia became a major battlefield. Two great empires, Carthage and Rome, fought for control of the western Mediterranean. During the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca famously marched from Spain across the Alps to attack Rome. Although he won several battles, Rome eventually defeated Carthage. By 206 BC, the Romans had forced the Carthaginians out of Iberia. After this victory, Rome slowly expanded its control over the entire peninsula. This was not easy. Many local tribes fought back fiercely, especially the Celtiberians. However, after nearly 200 years of war, the Roman conquest was completed in 19 BC under Emperor Augustus, following the Cantabrian Wars in northern Spain. Once conquered, Iberia became a Roman province known as Hispania. The Romans transformed the land. They built large cities such as Tarraco, Tarragona, Emerita, Augusta, Mérida, and Caesar Augusta, Zaragoza. They also constructed roads, bridges, aqueducts, and public buildings that improved travel, trade, and daily life. Hispania became an important and wealthy part of the Roman Empire. The region exported grain, olive oil, wine, and metals to other Roman lands. Over time, the local people adopted Latin, Roman laws, and Roman traditions. This process, called Romanization, deeply changed society. Hispania even produced some of Rome's greatest figures. Famous thinkers and writers such as Seneca, Lucan, and Martial were born there. Two Roman emperors, Trajan and Hadrian, also came from Hispania. By the later Roman period, the region was fully Roman in culture and language. Latin slowly evolved into early forms of the Spanish language, and Christianity spread quickly, becoming the dominant religion.
These changes formed the foundation of early Spanish identity. In the early 5th century AD, the Western Roman Empire began to collapse. As Roman power weakened, several Germanic tribes invaded Iberia. Groups such as the Vandals, Suebi, and Alans crossed the Pyrenees and took control of different regions. The Suebi created a kingdom in Galicia, while the Vandals ruled parts of the south. Soon after, another Germanic people, the Visigoths, entered Iberia around 415 AD. At first, their center was in southern France, but later they moved their capital to Toledo. Over time, the Visigoths defeated or absorbed the other tribes and even pushed out a small Byzantine presence in the south. By the late 6th century AD, the Visigothic kingdom of Toledo controlled almost the entire Iberian peninsula. Their kingdom lasted for more than 200 years. Although they ruled as Germanic kings, the Visigoths preserved much of Roman law, culture, and Christianity, blending it with their own traditions. This final stage continued shaping the history and culture of Spain for centuries to come. In the early 7th century AD, a single event completely changed the history of Spain. An army of Muslim Arabs and Berbers crossed from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula. They were led by a commander named Tariq ibn Ziyad. His forces crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and landed in southern Spain. At that time, Spain was ruled by the Visigoths, but they were weak and divided. A civil war was already happening between rival Visigothic leaders. Taking advantage of this chaos, the Muslim army faced the Visigothic king Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete. The Muslim forces won a decisive victory, and King Roderick was defeated. After this success, the Muslim armies moved very quickly. Tariq ibn Ziyad and his superior commander, Musa ibn Nusr, led their troops across the peninsula. City after city fell with little
resistance. By 718 AD, almost the entire Iberian Peninsula was under Muslim control. Europeans later called these Muslim rulers the Moors. The conquered land became known as Al-Andalus. Only a small region in the mountainous north remained outside Muslim rule. This area later became the Christian kingdom of Asturias, which would play an important role in the future. The Muslim conquest marked the beginning of a new and vibrant era in Spanish history. At first, Al-Andalus was ruled as a province of the powerful Umayyad Caliphate, whose capital was far away in Damascus. However, in the 8th century, the Umayyad Empire collapsed during the Abbasid Revolution. One Umayyad prince, Abd al-Rahman I, escaped to Spain. In 756, he established the Emirate of Córdoba, making Al-Andalus independent from the Abbasids. Later, in 929, his descendant Abd al-Rahman III declared himself caliph, creating the powerful Caliphate of Córdoba. Under Muslim rule, Spain experienced a golden age of learning and culture. Science, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, art, and architecture flourished. Knowledge from the wider Islamic world flowed into Al-Andalus, making it one of the most advanced regions in Europe at the time. Religion in Al-Andalus was more tolerant than in many Christian kingdoms of the same period. Islam was the dominant religion, but Christians and Jews were allowed to practice their faiths if they paid a special tax. This created a multi-religious society where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived side by side. This period is sometimes called La Convivencia, meaning living together. Many great thinkers lived during this time. The Muslim philosopher Averroes, also known as Ibn Rushd, and the Jewish scholar Maimonides were both from Al-Andalus. The city of Córdoba became one of the greatest cities in Europe. It had large libraries, universities, hospitals, paved streets, and street lighting when many European cities had none. Al-Andalus was also very wealthy and productive. Muslim rulers introduced new crops such as rice, citrus fruits, and sugar,
along with advanced irrigation systems. The region became famous for its silk, steel, and skilled craftsmanship. Many of Spain's most famous buildings were constructed during this time, including the Great Mosque of Córdoba and later the stunning Alhambra Palace in Granada. Over time, however, Muslim Spain began to weaken politically. In the early 11th century, the Caliphate of Córdoba collapsed. The land broke apart into many small independent kingdoms called taifas. These taifas often fought each other, which made them vulnerable. This division allowed the Christian kingdoms in the north to slowly expand southward. These kingdoms, descendants of Asturias, included León, Castile, Navarro, Aragon, and Portugal. Over many centuries, the border between Muslim and Christian lands shifted back and forth. This long struggle became known as the Reconquista. During this time, famous figures like El Cid rose to power. He sometimes fought for Christian kings and sometimes for Muslim rulers, using the conflicts to gain land and influence. As Christian forces grew stronger, Muslim rulers sought help from North Africa. Powerful Berber dynasties such as the Almoravids and later the Almohads crossed into Spain to defend Muslim territory. For a time, they succeeded in stopping Christian advances. The turning point came in 1212 at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. A united Christian army defeated the Almohads in a crushing victory. After this battle, Christian forces rapidly conquered most of Al-Andalus. By 1250, nearly the entire Iberian Peninsula was under Christian control. The only Muslim state left was the Emirate of Granada in the far south. Granada survived for 2 more centuries by paying tribute to the Kingdom of Castile and using careful diplomacy. Meanwhile, the Christian kingdoms continued to unite. A major step toward a single Spain happened in 1469 when Queen Isabella I of Castile married King Ferdinand II of Aragon. Together, they ruled as the Catholic monarchs. In 1492, their combined armies captured Granada, ending 781 years of Muslim rule in Iberia. This marked the end of the Reconquista and the beginning of a new chapter in Spanish history. That same year, Isabella and Ferdinand made another historic decision. They ordered the expulsion of Jews who refused to convert to Christianity and expanded the power of the Spanish Inquisition, whose goal was to enforce religious unity across Spain. These actions deeply changed Spanish society and culture. The Spanish Inquisition became very powerful after 1492. Its main targets were converted Jews, known as conversos, and later converted Muslims, called Moriscos. These people had officially become Christians, but the Inquisition suspected that many of them were secretly practicing their old religions. The goal of the Inquisition was to enforce religious unity across Spain, but it also created fear, punishment, and suffering for thousands of people. At the same time, the Catholic monarchs made another historic decision. They agreed to support Christopher Columbus on a risky voyage west across the Atlantic Ocean. Columbus believed he could reach Asia by sailing west. In October 1492, he landed in the Bahamas, unknowingly opening the door to the European discovery of the Americas. In the years that followed, Spanish explorers and soldiers, known as conquistadores, traveled deep into the New World. They conquered vast lands and defeated powerful native civilizations,
including the Aztec Empire in Mexico and the Inca Empire in South America. These conquests led to the creation of the Spanish Empire, one of the largest empires in human history. At its height in the 18th century, the Spanish Empire controlled most of South and Central America, Mexico, Florida, and large parts of what is now the United States. Spain also ruled territories in the Asia-Pacific, including the Philippines, as well as outposts in Africa. Silver and gold from mines in Mexico and Peru flowed into Spain, making it one of the richest and most powerful nations in the world.
Spain's power was not limited to overseas lands. In 1516, the Spanish throne passed to Charles I, the grandson of Ferdinand and Isabella. He later became known as Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. Through inheritance, Charles ruled not only Spain, but also vast Habsburg territories in Central Europe. His empire was so large that people said the sun never set on his lands. Charles V was the most powerful ruler of his time, but controlling such a huge empire was extremely difficult. When his son, Philip II, took power, he worked to centralize the government. In 1561, Philip made Madrid the permanent capital of Spain, strengthening royal control. Despite this, Spain faced growing problems. In the 16th century, much of northern Europe was experiencing the Protestant Reformation. Spain, as the leading Catholic power, spent enormous resources defending the Catholic faith. This included fighting the Dutch Revolt, which eventually led to the independence of the Dutch Republic. Spain also clashed with England, most famously in 1588, when Philip II sent the Spanish Armada to invade England. The mission failed disastrously due to storms and English resistance, damaging Spain's reputation as an unbeatable naval power. In the Mediterranean, Spain faced another major enemy, the Ottoman Empire. In 1571, Spain joined forces with Venice and the papacy to defeat the Ottoman fleet at the Battle of Lepanto, a major victory for Christian Europe. In 1580, Spain inherited the Portuguese crown, creating the Iberian Union between Spain and Portugal. For 60 years, both countries and their global empires were ruled by a single Spanish monarch. The late 16th and early 17th centuries marked the height of Spain's golden age. This was a time of incredible art, literature, and culture, supported by royal patronage and imperial wealth. Great painters such as El Greco, Diego Velázquez, and Murillo created timeless masterpieces. Writers like Miguel de Cervantes wrote enduring works, including Don Quixote. Magnificent buildings, such as the royal palace of El Escorial, were also completed during this period. However, beneath this cultural success, Spain's political and economic strength was weakening. The 17th century brought constant wars, including involvement in the 30 Years' War, which drained Spain's resources. One crisis followed another. In 1640, Portugal regained its independence, ending the Iberian Union. Spain also faced revolts in Catalonia and suffered territorial losses to France, confirmed by the Treaty of the Pyrenees in 1659. Spain's influence in Europe steadily declined. When Charles II, the last Habsburg king of Spain, died in 1700, the country was already very weak. Charles II was physically and mentally fragile due to generations of Habsburg inbreeding, and he left no heir. His death triggered a massive conflict known as the War of the Spanish Succession. European powers fought over who should control Spain. The French Bourbon dynasty against the Austrian Habsburgs, with battles fought across Europe and within Spain itself. The war ended in 1714 with the Treaty of Utrecht. Philip V, the French candidate, became king of Spain, but Spain lost important territories. Britain gained Gibraltar and Minorca, among other concessions. Under the new Bourbon dynasty, Spain began a period of reform and modernization. The Bourbon kings introduced French-style centralized government, aiming to strengthen the state and improve the economy. These changes were influenced by the Enlightenment ideas. In the mid-18th century, King Charles III became one of Spain's most effective reformers. He promoted science, education, and learning, invested in roads, canals, and infrastructure, improved agriculture and trade, and reduced the political power of the church. These changes helped prepare Spain for the modern age, even though it never fully regained the global dominance it once enjoyed. These changes became known as the Bourbon Reforms. Their main goal was to fix Spain's weak economy and make the government more efficient, both in Spain itself and in its overseas colonies. By the end of the 18th century, Spain had recovered some pride and made progress toward modernization. However, it was still far from the powerful position it had enjoyed during its great empire in the 16th century. New dangers soon appeared. The French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte shook all of Europe in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, and Spain was deeply affected. At first, Spain was an ally of Napoleonic France, but everything changed in 1808 when Napoleon betrayed Spain. He removed the Spanish king and placed his own brother, Joseph Bonaparte, on the Spanish throne.
This act angered the Spanish people. On May 2, 1808, the people of Madrid rose up against the French occupiers. This uprising is famously shown in paintings by Francisco Goya. The rebellion quickly spread across the country and began the Peninsular War. Spanish soldiers, local militias, and guerrilla fighters fought fiercely against the French army. Spain was not alone. Britain, led by Arthur Wellesley, later known as the Duke of Wellington, joined the fight along with Portuguese forces. The war was extremely brutal, with violence and suffering on all sides. After years of hard fighting, the French army slowly weakened. By 1814, Napoleon's forces were finally driven out of Spain. Spain regained its independence, but the cost was enormous. While Spain was fighting for freedom at home, its American colonies saw an opportunity. Inspired by the American and French revolutions, colonies across Latin America began to rebel. Starting in the 1810s, wars for independence spread throughout Spanish America. By 1825, nearly all of Spain's major colonies, Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Argentina, and many others, had won independence after long and bloody struggles. Spain was left with only a few overseas possessions, mainly Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. The loss of its empire was a devastating blow to Spain's economy and its status as a world power. The 19th century brought even more instability. King Ferdinand VII ruled Spain with frequent changes between strict absolutism and limited liberal reforms. When he died in 1833, the throne passed to his young daughter, Isabella II. However, Ferdinand's brother, Don Carlos, challenged her right to rule. This dispute led to the First Carlist War, a violent civil conflict between liberals who supported Isabella and traditionalists who supported Carlos. Isabella's side eventually won, but Carlist rebellions would return again and again throughout the century. Although Isabella II remained queen, her reign was marked by constant problems. Spain experienced political chaos, military coups, and deep divisions within society. At the same time, signs of modernization appeared. Railways were built, industry began to grow, and early liberal reforms took shape. Still, public dissatisfaction grew, and Isabella II was finally overthrown in 1868. What followed was a short and unstable period of experimentation. In 1870, Amadeo I, an Italian prince, became king of Spain. He ruled for only 3 troubled years before giving up the throne. After his abdication, Spain declared the First Spanish Republic, but it collapsed quickly due to internal conflict and renewed Carlist violence. In 1875, the Bourbon dynasty was restored. Isabella's son became king as Alfonso XII. A new constitution was introduced, and a political system was created in which conservative and liberal parties took turns in power.
This helped bring a period of relative stability to a country exhausted by decades of unrest. However, Spain soon suffered another major humiliation. In 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out. What began as U.S. support for Cuban independence quickly turned into a disastrous war for Spain. In a short time, Spain lost Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, its last major overseas colonies. This defeat, known as the Disaster of 1898, deeply shocked the nation. Spain entered a period of deep reflection and national self-doubt. With its empire almost entirely gone, Spain turned its attention to North Africa, establishing control over parts of Morocco in the early 20th century. During World War I, King Alfonso XIII kept Spain neutral. This briefly helped the economy, as Spain traded with both sides. However, after the war, serious problems returned. In 1921, Spanish forces in Morocco suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Berber tribes, causing a national scandal and anger within the military. This unrest led to a dramatic change. In 1923, General Miguel Primo de Rivera carried out a military coup with the support of King Alfonso XIII. He suspended the constitution and ruled Spain as a dictator, serving as prime minister with absolute power. Although his regime began without democratic legitimacy, it achieved early successes. Primo de Rivera ended the Moroccan conflict, stabilized the economy for a time, and invested heavily in roads, railways, and public works. For a short period, Spain experienced order and development, though at the cost of political freedom. By 1930, the dictatorship of Miguel Primo de Rivera was falling apart. A weak economy and the loss of public support caused his regime to collapse. Because the monarchy had supported the dictatorship, it also lost the trust of the people. In April 1931, local elections showed strong support for Republican candidates. Seeing this, King Alfonso XIII chose to leave the country and went into exile. Soon after, the Second Spanish Republic was declared. The new republic promised major change. It introduced a modern, secular constitution. Women gained the right to vote. The government planned land reform to help poor farmers, allowed regional autonomy, and reduced the political power of the Catholic Church and the military. These reforms excited many people, especially workers and reformers. However, they angered conservative groups, including landowners, church leaders, and parts of the army. As a result, Spanish society became deeply divided. Political violence increased and tensions grew stronger.
During the early 1930s, Spain experienced a series of close elections. Power shifted back and forth between left-wing and right-wing governments. Each change created more fear and anger on the other side. The country became increasingly unstable. In July 1936, a group of army officers led by Franco attempted a military coup to overthrow the republic. The coup failed to take control of the entire country. Instead, it split Spain in two and triggered the Spanish Civil War. On one side were the nationalists, led by Franco. They included monarchists, fascists, conservative Catholics, and parts of the military. On the other side were the Republicans, made up of liberals, socialists, communists, and anarchists. The war quickly became part of a larger international struggle. Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy supported Franco with weapons, troops, and aircraft. The Soviet Union supported the Republicans, and thousands of international volunteers came to Spain to fight for the Republic. The war was extremely violent. Both sides committed brutal acts. One of the most famous events was the bombing of Guernica, a Basque town destroyed by German aircraft. The conflict brought suffering to civilians across the country. In 1939, Franco's forces captured Madrid. Soon after, he declared victory.
The war had lasted 3 years and left Spain devastated. Around 350,000 people died and hundreds of thousands fled into exile. The country was broken, traumatized, and deeply divided. After the war, Franco established a dictatorship. The monarchy was suspended. Only one political party was allowed. Thousands of former Republicans were executed, imprisoned, or silenced. Political opposition was crushed. Franco's regime was authoritarian and ultra-conservative. It promoted Catholicism as a central part of Spanish identity. Free speech was censored. Regional languages and cultures such as Basque, Catalan, and Galician were suppressed in favor of a single, unified Spanish identity based on Castilian culture. During World War II, Franco sympathized with the Axis powers, but he kept Spain officially neutral. This decision saved Spain from the destruction suffered by much of Europe. After the war, Spain became internationally isolated because of Franco's dictatorship. However, this changed with the start of the Cold War. Western countries, especially the United States, saw Franco as a strong anti-communist ally. They renewed relations, opened military bases in Spain, and provided economic aid. In the 1950s and 1960s, Franco's government introduced economic reforms. These policies led to rapid growth in industry, tourism, and foreign investment. This period became known as the Spanish Miracle. Cities expanded, jobs increased, and living standards improved for many Spaniards. Despite economic growth, political freedom did not return. Inequality remained, and repression continued, especially against students, workers, and regional nationalist movements. As the 1970s approached, one question dominated Spanish society: what would happen after Franco? He was old, in poor health, and had no children. Many Spaniards wondered whether the dictatorship would continue or whether Spain would finally return to democracy. Before his death, Francisco Franco chose Prince Juan Carlos, the grandson of King Alfonso XIII, as his successor. Franco believed that Juan Carlos would continue his authoritarian system and protect Franquistism after his death. However, when Franco died in 1975 and Juan Carlos became king, he surprised both Spain and the world. Instead of continuing the dictatorship, Juan Carlos decided to guide Spain toward democracy. One of his first major decisions was to appoint Adolfo Suárez, a reform-minded politician, as prime minister. Together, they began carefully dismantling the old system. Political parties were legalized, including groups that had been banned for decades. In 1977, Spain held its first free elections since the Civil War. In 1978, Spain adopted a new democratic constitution. This constitution created a parliamentary monarchy, where the king serves as head of state, but political power lies with an elected parliament. It also recognized Spain's regional diversity, establishing a system of autonomous communities that gave regions like Catalonia and the Basque Country greater self-government. The following decades marked a period of stability, growth, and international integration. Democratic Spain firmly joined the Western world. The country became a member of NATO in 1982 and joined the European Economic Community, later the European Union, in 1986. These changes brought new confidence and opportunity. Spain experienced strong economic growth, rising living standards, and a greater role on the global stage. This new era was symbolized in 1992 when Spain hosted the Olympic Games in Barcelona, showcasing a modern, open, and confident nation to the world. This prosperity continued into the early years of the 21st century. However, the global financial crisis of 2008 hit Spain hard. The economy slowed sharply, unemployment rose to extremely high levels, and the government introduced austerity measures to stabilize public finances. Many Spaniards faced difficult years during this period. In the years that followed, Spain gradually began to recover. Economic growth returned, employment improved, and the country adapted to new challenges. Although problems remain, Spain has continued moving forward. Today, Spain still faces internal debates and tensions. These include the Catalan independence movement, questions about regional autonomy, and discussions about the future role of the monarchy. Despite these challenges, Spain remains a stable democratic country. After centuries of invasion, empire, civil war, dictatorship, and reform, Spain has shown remarkable resilience. Its modern democracy stands as the result of long struggle, constant change, and the determination of its people to build a freer and more inclusive society.